So, oh, you can't even see all of this. Okay, so apparently some students tried to clean this board, so it looks like the letters are melting. But I'm just going to have this up behind me. This is also on your syllabus. At this point, you should be starting to like internalize this structure, particularly because at this point, I want you to be moving beyond this structure. But I want it up so I can make a couple points. So first of all, I want to say that for the most part, be right back. I need to get my list of things to work on. For the most part, well, actually, not for the most part, completely across the board, everybody did a really outstanding job analyzing the literature and understanding the stories. I was really impressed with the level of thinking and, frankly, the level of writing. The actual sentence structure writing, there's a few sentence errors, but for the most part, the thinking and writing was really advanced. What we need to really work on across the board is organization, which doesn't surprise me because writing is hard to teach, and so it's not often taught thoroughly. So the first thing I want to say is everybody did awesome. No grades were below a C. Mostly it was, I think, a high C was the lowest grade. And my philosophy of grading is if you show improvement, you are likely to land on, everything's an average, but like if you're worried about the C you got, don't worry about that, because if you're then consistently getting A's and B's, I will just make that first essay be weighted a little bit less. I'll skew towards up, because the point is not to penalize you for your learning, but to help you grow and learn. So I want to see mastery of the ability to convey really complex thinking and ideas and analysis of exciting literature on the page. And if I see that growth, your grade will reflect that. So nobody stress about your grades, particularly because everybody was, I think that this is the highest batch of 102 essays I have seen. So I'm excited about that. But I do want to review some structure, and I want to explain to you how everything kind of fits together. So one of the things I saw a lot was introductions, that somewhere in the hook or in the background information, you're not really giving us a hook that makes sense, or your background information is general. And so there's a lot of like openings with a quotation or philosophy or some kind of discussion of the ultimate truth that you're then about to discuss in the text. You can avoid that, and in fact you should, because I really want your essays to be rooted in the text, okay? I don't want general information. If you need to use a hook to get into the essay and you have to do it that way, then do so. But if we could avoid that and you could just jump into analyzing the text at a high level, that's preferable. In line with that same mistake that's being made, I'm seeing topic sentences with the same level of generality, right? The topic sentence is like, injustice is bad. We see this in the story of blah, blah, blah. You don't need to announce that injustice is bad. We know that injustice is bad. You're making a point about that. Your job is to tell me why it's bad in the story and what the author is saying about that and how they're using a literary device to prove that, right? Or how the characters are interacting with the same theme, right? You don't need to give me reasons why this is generally true in the world. We're not worried about the world. We're worried about this. We're worried about the world within this text, right? We're worried about world truths and how they are reflected and expressed and discussed and explored in the actual text. So literally everything, with the exception of relate to the world and hook, everything else in this essay needs to be rooted in your text, your actual text. So if you're talking about the lady with the dog, don't give me a general truth about infidelity. Tell me why infidelity in the lady with the dog is evocative of the theme of isolation, right? You need to root everything, connect everything back to the text. Always, 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 always. So that was one mistake I'm seeing. I left comments wherever I saw that to not do that and give you I tried to give people an example of how they could avoid that by just adding a couple words or tweaking the sentence to make it be related directly to the text. Okay, another mistake I'm seeing is the author of a text is not necessarily the characters. In fact, almost always we can assume the author is not the characters. Even if the author, the writer, is writing about their life or they're drawing inspiration from their life, if it's a piece of fiction, it's our job as readers to assume it's actually not the writer. So some folks were making assumptions about the writer in their essay and writing an essay kind of about what they thought the writer's life was, and that's not your job. Your job is to read the story and to tell me what the theme is, how the elements interact with each other, how they form the plot, whatever it is you chose to write about. Your job is that, not to tell me or prove to me that the writer is the character. Okay? Concision. Okay, concision goes hand in hand with passive voice or passive construction. Concision is just a fancy word to say keep it concise or keep it short, keep it direct. Concision is difficult. I struggle with concision. A lot of writers struggle with concision because there's always so much to say, right? When you get your thoughts on the page, that's when it's good to go back and check for concision. Sometimes you just have to get them out. Actually, any of these mistakes I'm talking about, get the thoughts down and then go back and edit for these things because it's worth it just to get the information on the page. But concision is making sure you're not using extra words to say the same thing. Saying something in the smoothest and most elegant and shortest way possible. More words doesn't equal more, it doesn't equal stronger expression. In fact, often it equals a weaker expression. Which brings me to passive voice. So passive voice is not technically an error. Like there's nothing grammatically wrong about it, but it is wordy and unnecessary, and it weakens your statements, it weakens your argument, and it weakens your writing. So an example of passive voice is if I were to say, the essay will be written by me. We don't need the by me or the will be, right? That's clunky. There's extra words there. I could change that and correct it to active voice and say, I will write the essay. When you use active voice, the subject of your sentence is also the actor, the person doing the thing, or the element doing the thing in your sentence. That's what you always want. You don't want to say, this story was written by this writer. Well, even that. The writer wrote the story. That's what you want to say. So be aware of that. Again, I tried to point that out. It's kind of a hard thing to see if you're used to writing that way. Academic writing used to be like that, especially like scientific journals and stuff. So I understand why a lot of you think about academic writing and then you default to this passive construction, because a lot of us have been trained, depending on where we went to school or what kind of work we were reading, have been trained to think the farther the author is from the piece they're writing, the more professional it sounds. That's not really how the world of that's not really how scholars see it anymore. It doesn't mean you necessarily need to use first person. Like, don't say, I am writing this essay to show you blah, blah, blah. But it does mean that when you're removing yourself or your characters from their action in this sentence with passive voice, all you're doing is creating more distance and more complication and more work for your reader. So that was a long way to say, speaking of concision, I clearly need to work on it. That was a long way to say that drop the passive voice and try to go to active voice. It's a habit. It's a habit a lot of us have picked up, and we have to unlearn it. But the good thing is that active voice is way easier. It's simpler. It's more natural to the way that we speak. So I hope that makes some sense. I can try to put up a resource on active voice as well. Unity. Okay, so now we got to talk about organization. Again, like I said, people are coming up with such great thoughts, such great analysis, such deep level reading. I was really impressed also by how many people wrote about really complex stories. Like y'all didn't choose the easy stories to analyze. You chose some really difficult stories with really interesting plot structures, and you analyze that really well. But some of those stories are so complex and so advanced, and your brains are so complex and so advanced, that there are so many different ideas to choose from when you're writing about them, that some folks were not able to settle on one, which led to a kind of confusing essay that, rather than really being an essay, was a collection of impressions. So some of your essays rely too heavily on summary, and some of your essays were full of analysis, but it was your impression rather than going back to the text and proving it. So when you're writing, the first thing you really need to do is make sure you only have one strong thesis statement. Really, one element of literature and one that proves a theme or that proves the plot for the fiction assignment. If you were to explore theme and you wanted to look at 3 different elements and 3 different paragraphs, that would be fine as long as you were so clear about what your thesis was and what the one theme you're exploring is that you kept it all tight and organized. But the problem is when you take on more things, your essays tend to get a little more distracted and a little bit more confused. And so this is happening. So amazing insights are being made, and then the next paragraph, there's a whole new thesis. And then again, amazing insights, but no text evidence. So it's like you're just writing a really smart journal entry on the text, and that is not what an essay is. An essay has to follow structure. It doesn't have to look like this, but it has to have all these elements. So you don't need to follow this structure in such a way where it's literally in the same order that I wrote it on the board, but you do need to make sure that you have all of these things in place so that you're proving your point, especially text evidence. The point of a literary analysis essay is to analyze the literature, not from your memory, not from your impressions, not from your opinion. You have to prove it through using the author's text, the actual author's words, to support what you are saying about the text. So that once you have a strong thesis, you'll have a much stronger essay and more unity. When we say unity, we just mean that everything has to line up, which we talked about here, right? Your topic sentences need to be supporting your thesis statement. Of course, your evidence supports your topic sentence, which means ultimately it supports your thesis statement, so on and so forth. It all lines up when you do it properly. And the way to check that is to make sure you have a strong thesis statement and then just keep going back to it and analyzing it and checking it as you write the whole time. I don't think that there's much more I need to say about these mistakes I'm seeing. For most folks, I said go back and review essay structure. There are so many videos on the web about it from me and from other people. I use slightly different language. Like I said, I think I separate out context in a way that other folks don't. And my kind of philosophy around analysis and interpretation is slightly different. But it's not opposed to anything any other teacher will tell you about structure and organization. So really the whole point is that you want your essay to support one argument. And if your essay is full of more than one argument, you don't have an essay. You have a brainstorm. You have a collection of, like I said, really smart impressions about a text. But smart impressions about a text are not the same as an essay, and they won't get the same grade as a strong essay. I hope that this was helpful. I am very tired. I'm coming off of finally finishing that book and submitting it. But now I'm going into, of course, grading all your essays, but job interviews, a huge lecture I have to write for my grad program, and then I will be traveling to my grad program and graduating. So bear with me. I will keep, like I said, responding to emails as often as I can and as quickly as I can, and giving you as much feedback as I can, and we will all get through this together. But you will see my face become more and more haggard as these 6 weeks go on because I'm overwhelmed. So if you're overwhelmed, solidarity, me too. But we'll get through this.